Anything you want to say, babes?
I just want to say thank you very much to everyone that's out there fighting for me. The team that's come together, and the support has been amazing. I've got a table full of rock stars here that are all working tirelessly around the clock fighting for this cause with me. And I just want all you guys out there across the world to know that I'm going to justify your effort, and I'm going to come back stronger and bigger and badder. And once I get back on my feet, we're going to justify all this. Make sure that all you guys' efforts don't go unnoticed. We're going to come together and have a huge party.
Oh, sucky now. Hell yeah, I know my dogs are watching. And if you ain't, I know you will be. And if you are watching and you ain't my dog yet, you will be, because I'm Swede and I'm here to help you get busy living. What's that? That's one epic adventure every single month for the next 38 months for me, but 55 in total. But for you, that's learning to live a purposeful, intentional, deliberate life. And this week, we're talking about the difference between illness and wellness, inspired by a post that goes into the Help Swede Walk Again fundraising campaign, The Life in the Year of Swedism's book. But first, since nothing is worth having if it ain't worth sharing, please help me welcome to the stage out of Los Angeles, the dynamic D-Rex.
Wow, that was so concise. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so happy to be here. Once again, we have a really interesting topic today. We remember that podcast we did about the blue zones, about the centenarians that I loved so much. I loved that episode. Absolutely. So I'm very excited to continue the conversation today when we talk about friendship circles, particularly friendship circles called Moais that we're very much looking forward to diving into and considering. How do you build one? How do you be part of these friendship groups for life?
Yes, and why? And if you're in the comments, please speak up. Let us know where you're coming in at us from. And if there's something that we are talking about that you want to chime in on, please, by all means, let us know that this is a subject that interests you. We are here for you. This entire project was spawned by the debt of human kindness that was bestowed upon me when my life was rescued 6 short years ago. And so I'm vowing to try to give back to the community. And I hope by trying to inspire you to live a purposeful, deliberate life, that is one way of doing so. Another way of doing so is that when we were pressed with the idea of fundraising, I wanted to try to have something to give back to the community as a gesture of our appreciation. And so one of the original members of the team recommended that, since social media and my presence on social media was a significant factor in me and the amount of support that we got worldwide, we thought that offering a collection of the posts that I'd done on Facebook would be a good way of giving back. So what we did is we devised we put together a book called The Life in a Year of Swedism's book. It's basically a collection of posts that have things that I posted on social media. All of the posts are prior to my injury. So anyone that gets a copy of the book is going to get a feel for, the type of life that I was living up to that point. Some of it was worthwhile. Some of it led to me chasing a monkey, but nevertheless, that's not the point. The point is that this book has spawned some of the HSWA has spawned some interest. And so what we do is we want to each week give you an idea of what type of posts are in the book. So this week we got a post from January 30th, 2014. I don't know where I was mindset wise, but this will tell you that I was located in Miramar Beach, which is where I used to live, when I posted the difference between illness and wellness, my friends, is really quite easy to see. Since illness starts with I and wellness starts with we. D-Rex, how does that land on you?
I can't tell you how much I love this one. I feel like it's really insightful. In fact, what did I say to you when you first read that to me? I was like, "What? You wrote that? Like what?" I really love it and find it very true. So many people are lonely in this society that's created to live through screens and visit each other through screens, and it's not the same. And we're going to be talking about why. What are the biological mechanisms that makes that not enough?
We are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the difference in illness and wellness, and why being ill, isolation causes, or the fact that there is so much research that proves that Clinically, we are sicker when we're alone, and we are healthier when we are together. We're also going to talk about social anxiety, which is one of the things that leads to us being alone. And then, like you said, we're going to talk about the Japanese tradition of forming moais. We'll get more into that. But first, I want to just talk about this Life in the Year of Swedism's book for real quick. Look, guys, this is not a campaign to have me have a career as an author. That's not my interest. This is a campaign, is a method to try to give back. Okay. My life was impacted. I want to try to find a way to impact people's lives the way that mine was impacted. And so this particular campaign is threefold. Number one, all of the proceeds from this book are going to go towards helping our man Schaefer, who is our first nominee, go to Panama to get a stem cell therapy. If you know somebody that you think could benefit from stem cells, please send their story to nominees@hswa.org. That's one way that this book is going to impact a life, is by all the proceeds going to send Schaefer to Panama to get stem cell therapies. Number two, excuse me, is by getting a book in your hand. Once we have 1,000 reservations, we're going to send the books. And by getting the book in your hand, you're going to be able to read about the stuff that I was posting, which developed a reputation for being inspirational, motivational, uplifting type of stuff. I try to be funny, try to be enlightening. It's not a bunch of complaints. It's not a lot of the stuff that you typically get on social media. I like to think that it was worth me to post it. So I like to think that it's worth for you to read it. So that's the number two way, is that by getting a book in your hand, hopefully that can inspire you to live a more motivated and inspired life, purposeful, deliberate, intentional, those things. But the third way is, once we get the 1,000 reservations, we're going to pull a name out of those first 1,000 donors. And the winner is going to go on an all expense, airfare included, 6-night, 7-day Alaskan adventure with Scooty Wells, who is the wolf, who knows Alaska as good as anybody probably on the planet. And he has Adventurous Alaska. You can go check him out on Instagram at Adventurous Alaska. Once whoever wins, we're going to connect you with Scooty Wells, and you and him are going to work out what time of year you're going to go to Alaska, depending on what things interest you and what your availability is and what his availability is. And you're going to have 2 seasonal excursions. You can do anything from sledding with the dogs to whale watching to the Northern Lights, which I'm sure everyone's going to want to be interested in that, but it only happens a certain time of the year. So the point is that Alaska might be the most amazing place on the planet as far as untouched, real, just utter wilderness. So that's the third way. We want to be able to get some people up on the most epic adventure of your life. We want to be able to enlighten people through your mindset training. And also the proceeds are going to send Schaefer to Panama. So illness versus wellness, D-Rex.
Yeah.
So this study here, oops, did I do that again? Each week when we have these different topics, depending on what the inspiration is, this one happened to be inspired by the post illness versus wellness. Illness starts with I and wellness starts with we. This is one of many studies that I read up on, and it just talks about how a positive impact of having social support on our well-being. And there are so many different ways that it impacts us. But this study here actually outlines how, what I think I can do is I can share I'm not even going to do that. The study, you can see what the name of the study is here: Advancing Social Connection as a Public Health Priority in the United States. And so I'm just going to read the abstract here because I think it will give you a good idea of what it's about. So it says, a robust study of scientific evidence indicates that being embedded in high quality, close relationships and feeling socially connected to the people in your life is associated with decreased risk for all-cause mortality, as well as a range of disease morbidities. So what that means, what they're saying in a word, is that the more we feel supported, the more confident we are that we have a social circle, that we have friends and family that we can rely on, the mortality is death. So it says that it's associated with decreased risk for all cause mortalities. That means across the board, people, according to this study, who are more connected are across the board likely to live longer and die. It says here, so what this graphic here is, and as you know, D-Rex, I've got some vision issues, but you can see here at the top of this, I'll say a comparison of decreased mortality across social connection and leading health indicators. So basically what this is saying is which of these, or how much being socially connected determines whether or not you will pass away. And it says that, so like, for example, it's above smoking. You can see the number 3 item on this list is smoking. So whether or not you are a smoker or not is less impactful on all-cause mortality than whether or not you're socially connected. I thought that was staggering.
That's pretty wild. Oh, you
Who
know
would-
what, Swede? I'm going to need you to put your headphones on because I am feeding back. And I want to just
Go ahead
talk
and
for a second. So I think that nobody actually, if they're paying attention, needs a scientific study to know that it's impactful for people to be together. You know, I think it's something that we all feel in our bones. But it's good to have scientific studies.
Yeah. All right, so let me see here. I actually was messing with this earlier, and it was giving me problems. So,
But I can't believe that it's actually more
head-
impactful than smoking.
are you able to hear me, T-Rex?
Yeah, can hear you. And yeah.
No, I'm not hearing you.
Hello, hello.
This is
So as I'll just keep talking
by now that
so that yeah, I know. You would think that by now things would run smoothly, but I tell you what, I mean, just about in anything that you do that requires so many moving parts, things can go wrong at any time.
So are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. No more feedback?
No.
All right. So yeah, we've talked plenty about the power of community and togetherness, and that's something you're going to get from me until the day I die. I'm such a huge believer in it, and to give you a little bit of an idea of why this is so important to me, I was alone a lot as a child. There was no lack of love among my family. Like, we are loving individuals, we all love each other, but we just don't have a really tight knit style. And because of the lifestyles of those in my grandmother's side of my family tree, there's not there's not longevity in our lives. And so, believe it or not, I have 2 people in my entire family older than me, just 2. And when you're only 21, that's quite staggering that you only have 2 people in your family older than you.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's safe to say that it wasn't an extremely healthy environment that I was raised in, and I was seeking, company regularly as a youngster. And I know all too well what it's like to be alone and to have a desire. So the social anxiety that we're going to talk about, I'm extremely familiar with that. So if you're in the audience and you have any experience with that you're open to sharing with us, or that you wanted to discuss, by all means, let us know. And so my sister chimes in on so many levels, she says. So thank you for confirming that. And
I often was alone as a child too, but I dove into that and I took it into adulthood. And I actually love to spend a lot of time alone. But I find that I'm healthier in an emotional way. I'm emotionally healthier when I put effort into seeing my friends regularly. And I had to force myself to start doing that, but I am absolutely a better person because of seeing them on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's staggering what the research shows about how impactful it is. It impacts our mental health. So it's one thing that, like, for you, when you think about cigarette smoking, like this chart is talking about here, when you think about cigarette smoking, we think about that's a physical ailment that you're actually poisoning your body. And who would think that having a lack of social connectedness poisons your brain?
Yeah.
We wouldn't we wouldn't think about that. These are things that I think, you know, in a sane society, which humans are becoming less and less by the minute, it seems. In a sane society, we would want to teach our children things that actually have an impact on our health and well-being. And it just seems that whether you want to blame the bad apples that have spoiled human bunches throughout history, or what you want to point the finger at, we don't really spend a lot of time talking about the things that impact us. I mean, think about it. I mean, what's more important than being able to manage your household budget as far as adulthood in 2024? Yet, how little of that is in our education system. And just like that, you would think that that's intuitive, that because it's so important that we know how to balance our monthly budget, and that we know that we're not making less than we need, and we're not spending more than we earn. You would also think that we would want to teach our children and learn ourselves more about how important it is to foster our connections and to be mindful about our social connections.
I think it's hard to know. It's hard to know things because what feels good? Comfort. What feels good? Laziness. And as society provides more opportunities for us to be lazy and do less, it feels good in a very temporary way. And maybe going out and farming your own food is a lot of work, but there's something in there that's going to awaken the ancient genes in you that are needed, but it is much easier and much more comfortable to order DoorDash. And I mean, it's like that in so many aspects of our modern life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that is just one angle, but there are so many ways in which technology has fostered isolation for us. And having COVID being, fresh on our heels, basically, just not far in the past, we all are probably still suffering and like haunted by the feeling of not being able to go to a concert or to go to a restaurant, or have to like stand away from each other. I personally, because I was living in a skilled nursing facility when COVID started, and I had just barely gotten out of it by the time things started to lighten up a little bit. I was leaving that nursing facility on a daily basis, like really aggressively seeking some sort of connection. And when that connection, when COVID hit and it was basically impossible, like people didn't want to hug, they didn't want to stand near you. Like after being, bedridden for so much of my life after my injury, and just wanting a hug and just wanting like some dap from a dude that was a buddy, just a feeling of togetherness that I had been so used to throughout my life because I was so aggressively in pursuit of social, connection. And then to have COVID be a restriction like that drove me mad. It really it was so upsetting. And the different ways that lacking social connection affects us, not just mentally, not just our physical health. I mean, but other aspects of physical health, like it's known, like, so these studies, the study that I showed there talks about stress reduction. We're just talking about knowing that you have a support system. We're not even talking about the actual execution of it, but just knowing that you have it reduces stress. Knowing that if you need somebody, that, you got your buddy, or you got, even if it's your sister, a lot of people, their best friends are their siblings, and my brother is my ace right now. Like that dude takes such good care of me, and knowing that he's there, like, is a stress reducer. But other aspects like longevity, we're going to talk about Moais, but we've talked about the centenarians. I know that that's a important topic for you. It talks about how strong social relationships are associated with a 50% increased likelihood of survival in general. Like, so imagine like the way that the studies pan out is like you have two different people that have identical, I don't know if there's such thing as two different people that are identical, but two people that have extremely similar situations, like as far as their physical health and mental health. If one of them has a strong support system and a social connectedness and the other doesn't, it's 50% more likely that the person with the connection will survive compared
Mhm.
to the other person of similar circumstances. Like how crazy is that? Like 50% more likely. How did that
I
that
mean, it
that
should be
impact us?
clear to everybody just when looking at survival of newborns that have skin to skin contact with their mother. There's something built into us to be with humans and to touch other humans. And,
Really is.
I think that what COVID did is that it brought us the ability to socialize over the computer and pretend that it's normal. And you know what? That actually did keep me much more sane during the pandemic. I would meet regularly with my friends and we would cook. And it was nice. Now, I mean, is it nicer to cook in person with my friends? Absolutely. You know,
I was gonna say, how did you guys eat each other's food then?
Well, we didn't. We ate our own food in our own little houses. But we would prep our food and cook it together and chat, and it was really nice. But it wasn't nice enough. Like we don't still do that. We get together in person. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious that to everybody that it's better to be with people than without.
and for sure. And luckily, technology hasn't completely made it so that we're not in contact with each other. It's just that we're not in physical
Yeah.
contact with each other, and that, like you said, has a big impact. And luckily, we are able to connect like this. For our audience that's watching, and for those of us that rely heavily on social media. Um, Luckily, that is there. So it's kind of like it's the cause and it's the solution. Like the fact that we have social media makes us less aggressively in pursuit of actual in in-person experiences. Um, but it makes us okay with not having those social experiences. Unfortunately, not having them social experiences does cause lots of problems. Another one that I came across in my research was the quality of life in older adults. So this
Mm.
one study said social support significantly contributes to the quality of life in older adults. Positive social relationships were associated with better physical health and psychological well-being. I mean, um, we all know growing old doesn't feel fun. And I mean, I refuse to grow old. I'm in complete denial about my
Yes.
age, but thinking about growing old and how uh, our abilities decline, whether it's mobility or availability, um, we're less likely to be out interacting with our peers, and as those things go down, we're less likely to be able to go out dancing or go play a game of flag football or basketball or whatever it is that uh, that we would have done in our younger lives. um, as we get older, the fact that those things become less available, it's just there's so much research that shows that the less that we interact with each other, the the more that these chronic illnesses start to set in earlier. Uh, the studies show that as people age and these impacts cause us to have less social connectedness, the prevalence of chronic illnesses skyrockets, and it's showing a correlation that's almost causation, and there's a lot of research there, and depression and anxiety, those numbers go up big time with decreased social connectedness, depression and anxiety. And I'll tell you what, man, that's something that if you are a fan of this podcast and you've been tuning in, and at some point in 2024, as my capabilities increase, we're going to be able to put this podcast in audio form. And if you become one of the people that listens, you're going to notice a repeated theme here, that this podcast, we have researched subjects along the way that we needed to grow stronger in. We don't always speak from the position of expertise here. We don't always have direct experience with these topics, but when we find topics that are important, we decide to delve into them. And it's not so that causes us to do a lot of research, and
Which I
um,
actually truly enjoy. There aren't many things on a daily basis that really challenge me to think outside the box. My days filled with things like picking up something at the store, or I have to do this part of my taxes. But these topics always challenged me to think. And speaking of that, like we were kind of laying the blame kind of heavy on technology there, but I'd like to pose the thought that maybe technology could also be the answer. Like, remember, we were looking at a website, meetup.com. So there was
Absolutely.
no meetup.com when we were younger. And you might not meet people if you went out. You didn't know where they were. You just had to chance it. But on a website like meetup.com, where you're going out for a common purpose, and people are going out to make friends. They're not going out to date. They're going out to just hang out with people and connect. I think that's one way in which technology can actually help us get in person with people. And, do you want to talk about the one meetup that you went to?
Yeah, I would also like to talk about what brought me to that. So,
Okay.
luckily, I have a daughter who is pursuing a career in wellness. She's hot on the yoga trail. She's on the verge of having of teaching her own classes and that type of thing. And and honestly, since she was a kid, like when we were together, we just talk and talk and talk. And as she's grown up, our togetherness is still talking. It's just starting to turn a little bit where I'm like going into this midlife crisis phase, and she's going into this, or she's educating herself into a realm that enables her to help me. And
Yeah.
so I turn to her a lot,
Mhm.
and she's like told me, recommended that I look into Meetup, and because of her recommendation, I got back in touch with Meetup, which I was using Meetup when I was traveling a lot. When I lived in Australia, especially, I used Meetup a lot. I made a lot of friends through Meetup in Australia.
Mhm.
But this weekend, I went to an acoustic jam, which was really cool, and I wouldn't have known anything about it if it weren't for Meetup. And I got there, and there was probably 20 or 30 people in there, mostly acoustic guitars, but several violins, several mandolins. When I say several, I'm like two or three violins, two or three mandolins. One guy had a bass guitar plugged in, so it wasn't acoustic, but we all know that bass is a really difficult acoustic
Yeah.
instrument to get loud enough to be able to
Yeah.
support or to hang with, guitars. So he needed to be plugged in. And I was expecting that there was going to be some drummers there, because technically, hand drums are acoustics. And when I got there, and I was greeted with open arms, like nobody there knew me at all.
Mhm.
And I got to be honest, man. Most of the time when I go places, I've I've come to just immediately notice how people respond to this wheelchair. People are immediately put on high alert, and they're like start to become so careful and so like just awkward. Just
Yeah.
one of the things that society is lacking, just like we don't teach children teach our kids about balancing their monthly budget, we also don't teach our children etiquette about how to behave around the disabled community. And
That's true.
when I got there, I noticed um, that this particular group was less awkward, and probably because they're advanced in age. Most of them were over 50. A lot of
Mhm.
them were over 60. So there's a lot more Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson than there was Post Malone and you know and,
Yeah.
and Ed Sheeran. But it was really cool, and I was excited actually. Um, when I asked them about drumming, they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't have any drummers ever come." And I'm like, "Well, then I'm coming back and I'm bringing my drum."
Yeah.
Because although I am getting to the point where I can play my guitar a little bit. I've got a special guitar that only has 4 strings. It's an alto acoustic guitar, and I am getting to the point where I can play it a little bit. I'm not to the point where I can jam out like I was doing on the beaches in Bali, but so I was kind of like worried about, my ability to keep up with these guys if it was only guitar that I was going to be able to bring. But once they told me that they didn't have any drums and they would love me to bring one, I'm that much more excited about going there and bringing my drum with me. So
Very
yeah,
nice.
meetup is going to be good for me in that respect.
Yeah, and I
And
think that that's important to acknowledge that, we could harp on technology and how it's harming human relationships, but you know what? There are ways in which it's actually fostering them. People get married off of dating apps all the time. These things do happen. I think where the danger is it makes us so comfortable that sometimes we opt to stay home and stare at our screens and text our friends rather than meet them for a drink, you know?
Yeah, and that in that way, it is causing quite a bit of issues, you know. And social anxiety is a real thing. I got that's something that I stumbled across in my research. So I've got a little graphic here that kind of does a little bit of
Okay.
a list of how of how social anxiety managing it involves like it says here, a combination of self-awareness, cognitive behavioral strategies, and gradual exposure to social situations. So when I was going to this meetup, I got to be honest, I sat in my car and I hesitated to go in. I started to feel the social anxiety, you know, where like, man, am I going to go in here and it's going to be people that are weird about the wheelchair, you know, and social anxiety is a very real thing, you know. Maybe you want to talk about the recent experience you had where social anxiety kind of came to the forefront with
Oh,
you.
well, you know what? It doesn't happen to me very often, and people see me as a very social, outgoing, extroverted person. But every once in a while, I get myself in a situation where I'm excited to go somewhere, like a art gallery opening or something. And as soon as I walk in the door, I start to struggle with feelings of self-worth. And I don't know where this comes from. It comes somewhere from my childhood. Um, I think it's that kind of growing up poor thing, always feeling like other people had
Yeah,
it more together. And
yeah,
like as soon as I walk into these places and I see that maybe my shoes aren't really what people are wearing or whatever, it comes right back. And the last time that I did want to go to one of these things, I walked in and I felt like I cannot be here right now. And I just turned around and went home. And like I didn't challenge myself. Okay, so on this list it says challenge negative thoughts. Well, I didn't do that. I just dove right into them.
So, for those of you that might not be familiar with social anxiety, the way that it's termed, it's actually a disorder. So, I'll just give you a little definition here. Also known as social anxiety disorder or social phobia, is a psychological condition characterized by persistent and intense fear of social situations or performance situations where an individual might be subject to scrutiny or evaluation by others. People with social anxiety often fear judgment, embarrassment, or rejection, leading to an avoidance of social interactions or extreme discomfort in social situations. So you can see how we were talking about already about how wellness is associated with we and illness is associated with I. If you are suffering from social anxiety, you can find yourself isolating yourself a lot. And so this is just a list that I compiled from the research about overcoming social anxiety. So practice deep breathing. Like if you find yourself like you're about to be in a social environment and you're starting to feel anxious, well, how did Price on the mic tell us in his episode? Just breathe.
Mhm.
Just take some deep breaths. And then, like you said, challenging negative thoughts is, you know, question, you know, identify the things that you're thinking about and are they realistic? You know, are you afraid for the right reasons, you know? And then the next here, the gradual exposure. It's like instead of avoiding the things that you typically would and solidifying your anxieties, like you're giving credence to your anxieties by avoiding them, just try on a, you know, try to gradually overcome them, you know. Start with smaller, less intimidating gatherings, you know, like maybe your work gatherings where you're somewhat familiar with the people, and then work your way up to the bigger gatherings, you know, and setting realistic goals. I mean, that's pretty obvious, you know. Celebrate your small victories, and then positive visualization. You know, imagine yourself instead of imagining yourself going into an environment and having everybody pointing their fingers at you and laughing at you, which happened to me a lot in elementary school, to be honest with
Oh.
you.
Oh, I don't know what happened there, but I wanted to say "aw," but it sounded like a Yeti or something. It sounded like Chewbacca.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, D-Rex, the soldier that she is with us, even though she's battling a sickness. So if she disappears, it's not because she doesn't love us. It's because she doesn't want us to see her or coughing ugly face. Is that what you say earlier?
Oh, I've just been muting myself to cough, but yeah, I just wanted to be here. I really enjoy this every week, and even sitting here talking about my experience with social anxiety going to an art gallery opening is worth it, you know? It's just that I'm a little off today, if you can't tell. I had to take my glasses off because I can't handle it.
We can't tell. You're
Okay.
oftentimes we are always our biggest critics. But I'm getting back to this list real quick. The mindfulness and grounding techniques, we've talked about that in the past, how that, I mean, mindfulness just, I think that that's something that it should be present in just about every aspect of personal development. Doesn't matter what issue you're trying to overcome, being mindful is always going to be, is always going to be a positive impact on it. And then prepare and rehearse. So rather than letting yourself be fearful of whatever environment that you're going to go into where you're going to be socially challenged, if you kind of preparing and rehearsing is just kind of like having an idea of what you can say or what you can think or talk about so that you don't like that silence that doesn't feel so deadly sets in, and then setting realistic expectations, and meaning that just acknowledge that you're not always going to get celebrated, your presence there. Sometimes you might feel like nobody's paying attention to you, but that doesn't mean that they don't like you. And and feeling like when people are giving you attention, it's not going to be negative attention. You just got to kind of like in your head, imagine, the good things. And that's where the positive self-talk comes in, replacing
I
critical
didn't.
positive
Oh, sorry.
affirmations. Go ahead. That's it.
Yeah, what I'd like to add to this is that I understand social anxiety is a real thing, but I feel like the best way to get through a situation where you're going to be talking to a bunch of people, you don't exactly know what to say. If you just keep asking people questions about themselves, it solves 90% of it.
Yeah, and isn't it funny that as we lead down this list, it goes into seeking support and joining social groups, because we were talking about the meetup, and I think that that's important that you said that, because I was making a point to Brother Doug the other day, and I think it's an interesting phenomenon. I learned about this a long time ago, and we were talking about it when we did the trust issue or the trust episode. Is that the more that you let people talk, the more they trust you. Isn't it ironic that that works that way? You would think that in order for them to trust you, they would need to know more about you, which means that you would need to do most of the talking.
Or
But
that you need to assert some sort of authority.
yeah, and it's funny how letting people talk about themselves or choose what is going to be talked about, even if they're not going to talk about themselves, letting others do the talking, it fosters a healthier connection. And so if you are feeling anxious and you don't know what to say, like you said, just ask them a question. And here's a go-to. It's called forming, FORM. If you're forming a person, and the F stands for friends, family, and where you're from. The O stands for occupation. The R stands for recreation, and the M stands for the message. So when you're forming someone, if you're like lacking off the top of your head of what to talk about, just go back to that acronym. Talk to them about their friends and their family and where they're from. Are you from around here? Do you have friends and family here? Or their occupation, what do you do for a living? And recreation, what do you like to do for fun? And then the M, the message, basically is what you've learned about them based on their friends, family, and where they're from, or their occupation, their recreation. You draw on those topics to come up with something to talk about. It's very effective.
I like that. I've never heard about that. We should put a graphic up someday about that.
Forming, yeah. I'm surprised that I didn't when we were talking about the trust, because that is one way to develop trust, is to exchange that type of information with people. The more they know that about you, and the more you know that about them, the more trust is fostered that way.
And I think it's important to say it's not just about letting people talk, but it's about actually listening to them and responding in thoughtful ways.
Yeah,
but you can always keep turning it back toward them. It really does work.
For sure.
Conversation going.
And when we were talking about this episode, and we brought up the centenarians, and you informed me about the concept of moais. I have been somewhat infatuated with this concept, and so
I love it too. And let's just start by kind of talking about what it is. This is these are friend groups. This is actually something that started on Easter Island, but this has been used by Okinawans for centuries, where a moai is a friend group for life. And it's an artificial thing. It's when the kids are little, you say, this is your moai. It's not like you pick their best friends, you form it for them. And then they expect that this will be their moai for life. And they grow old together. And it's a network that they can depend on. It's a social network that gets together at least once a week. And if somebody's sick, someone from the moai will come by and check on them or see what they need. And it's kind of like a support system. And it's one of the main reasons why Okinawans live so long.
isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that there's, clinical evidence? And I always go back to clinical evidence because with the state of politics these days, the word disinformation and misinformation and malinformation, it's like every other word that you hear if you turn on the television has something to do with that. So to me, having peer-reviewed studies that is experts that are entering their opinions and their study or their research subject or matter into a forum where other experts are all going to review it and have it come back and be supported in their industry is important. And so that's why you'll hear me talk about clinical a lot, because that's the environment in which they're doing these studies, and to have clinical proof that having lifelong friendships leads to living longer lives is so amazing. And so what I got another fancy little graphic here that you might find interesting. So like it says here, belonging to a moai provides a supportive community where individuals share common goals, celebrate achievements, and offer mutual engagement, fostering lifelong connections and personal growth. And I think
it's never too late. It's never too late. Just because we said that you form these things in childhood, you can form them at any time. And I think that's important to say.
Yes. And I'm very interested in fostering something like this moving forward with the Help Swede Walk Again audience. And when we were talking about it earlier this week, some names came up of people that have been lifelong friends of mine already, and I'm not in touch with them very much, other than you. I don't speak to very many people that I knew, when I was a kid. And some of my oldest friends, like virtually no one that I knew before I moved to the west side of Erie back in the end of sixth grade. The only two people that I'm in touch with that knew me before I moved to the west side, Ray Ferrito, who's chimed in here on the show quite a bit. Ray, if you're in the audience, let us know you're here. I met Ray on the first day of school in the first grade, and then I met Paul Santone in the fourth grade. And so Paul, when we were talking about the people that, so if we were going to try to form a moai, identifying potential members is the first step here. Paul was the first person I thought of. Me and that dude, our personalities just click. Our senses of humor are similar. I feel like the first day I met him, when I met him at Gannon University, back in, I guess it was probably 1986 or something like that. And man, like he became my friend immediately, so much so that like he lived far away from me. He lived, in the Upper West Side, and I lived in the Lower East Side. So like seeing him outside of school when you're 10 years old was virtually impossible. But I just remember looking so forward to Thursdays to go in to Gannon and getting to hang out with Paul. So Paul, if you're listening, or if you hear this down the road, man, know that in my interest of forming a moai, you might be getting that call. So,
and you know what? I like that thought is, even if these are people that you haven't spoken to in years. Part of forming a moai as an adult is the vulnerability to say, hey, I enjoy your company and I want to talk to you more often.
Yeah, and what we're trying to identify here is things that we can do when we acknowledge that illness starts with I and wellness starts with we. What can we do to overcome that, or to better our odds of a positive outcome in that regard? And so, maybe forming a moai, or being mindful of who your lifelong friends are, or who are the people that maybe not you haven't been lifelong friends up to this point, but that you would like to have that type of relationship moving forward, and being mindful of it, and pursuing it. And so, like it says here, number 2, divine purpose and values. So, articulating the common goals and principles, and like the level of commitment that you expect out of it. If you want to really have a moai and you're going to try to form one. Now, this is, you said Easter Island is where it's a rock.
I believe that's where it
Yeah,
originated.
I believe I read that too. But Japan is where it's like a significant part of their culture now.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we're not Japanese doesn't mean we can't recognize that they're doing something amazing and try to mimic it, and flatter
Yeah,
them.
especially if it's healthy for everybody. It's something that we
Sure.
should all be modeling.
So just because we weren't lucky enough to be Japanese and have a moa identified for us in our youth, doesn't mean that we can't be mindful of it and try to create one. And
Mhm.
like another step here, utilize existing networks for obvious reasons, organize social gatherings. So, before this thing is all said and done, and as we're picking up steam going into our second year of doing this, we've got 4.5 years to go. So we're not even close to halfway yet. But as we start to move forward, I see a time in the future where once per month, my monthly epic adventures are going to be in areas where I have some connections there. So I would love it if we could organize a social gathering once a month in these areas that I travel to. And, those could be like a loose form of moais, as long as we have common purpose and values.
Mhm.
Even if the purpose is to hang out with me and value our friendship.
Mhm.
You know, um,
Well, I think that's important for people to put intention into. We go out and we hang out with our friends, but to like just intentionally say, I'm going out to spend time with you because I enjoy your company. Um,
yeah,
and like communicating that, then it becomes something else.
there's so much confidence and joy that comes from the comfort. That's
Mhm.
why I wanted to add this list here for anybody that is interested. And I do want to revisit this. You know, um, Establishing regular meetings has organizing social gatherings, those are kind of tied together.
Mhm.
Cultivate trust and open communication. I mean, that's got to be the key. I mean, what's the point of having close relationships if you don't trust each other and you can't be open with each other?
Mhm.
Um, and celebrating achievements when you have a group and you decide that you're going to meet regularly and you're going to commit to these common values, and you see yourselves maintaining consistency. That's something that you should be aggressive about celebrating and being proud of. Supporting each other. I mean, these things kind of overlap a lot on this list here, but they're important. And I don't think that there's any value in taking things for granted and not identifying things. Just assuming that these things are included or present. We all know what assuming does.
And you know what? Oh yeah. I wondered if we had the same seventh grade teacher. That's where I learned about that.
Well,
I doubt it.
I went to the seventh grade at Roosevelt.
I would
But
like
do you
to.
remember who your teacher was?
No, I don't. Um, I want to say that this adapt to group dynamics part. Um, so when you're forming a moai, it should be relatively small. It should be ideally 5 to 7 people, because if it's more than that, then it tends to break off into cliques. And that's not what
Mhm.
this is about. This is a small social network that is committed to each other. And it's important that you don't get too big, or you don't expect so many people to be part of it.
Yeah, and that truth is what's sort of curbed my consideration of maybe trying to form a Get Busy Living podcast, Moai, because we want volume and we want a large community, and so that doesn't jive well. But that doesn't mean that the principles and the values that and the outcome, the positives, the advantages of Moai can't be stuff that we integrate. The last thing here, create symbolism or traditions. That reminds me. So I can't say that it was a Moai, but when I first moved to Florida, I met a guy who you've since been to his house for Thanksgiving, and he already had a couple buddies that they were tight, and they welcomed me into their friendship circle. And before you knew it, there was four of us. I was the Swedish guy. We had a guy from Kansas who has a Native American heirs, and then we had a Japanese guy, and we had a Korean guy. And we all had some level of white in us. I mean, I'm completely European, but those guys had some European and some Asian, and Danny had Native American. But so we were all slightly different in our cultural backgrounds, but we formed what eventually became known as the Four Horsemen. And I think it was a girl that we worked with that Brian ended up marrying, and she ended up becoming the official first lady of the Four Horsemen. But I think she's the one that coined us the Four Horsemen, and it's helpful. Like, that's a symbol of what we were, and we were tight, and those are the guys that I look forward to seeing most when I go back to Florida.
Yeah, it's a form of branding, right? Like, humans love branding.
Yeah.
It's something they can sink their teeth into.
For sure.
But yeah, that's a great name. That seems like something you can kind of base a tattoo off of,
Yeah. I wonder what it would take to get those guys I'm planning on going back to Florida in April, and I'm hoping to see those guys. I wonder what it would take. They probably like, all right, sweetie, if you pay for it, or like, well, the thing is, to be honest, like when we first came together, we were all young, we were all single. Well, actually, I was married, and they were all single, and then I became single, and then they all shacked up like relatively shortly after that. But we, after that, family life kind of took us apart. Two of them Brian has been working for the same company his whole entire life, and they take 60 hours of his life a week. And Adam is maybe the hardest working person I know. Him and Jigga Jake Halcutt, those two, the way that their brains process work is amazing. So it's just that, we weren't able to socialize as often as we did when we first got together. So we never drifted apart, and with, as far as love goes, we might not be as tight as far as how much time we spend together anymore. But there's no love lost, and it really is, it warms my heart to think about, that those times that I've had with those guys and how much they mean to me, really. And
it seems to me that if you even just started a text thread just to say hi every once in a while, it could help keep that Moai stronger,
That's definitely worth considering. And I like that you were talking about it being branding, because I've got something that I'd like to share when it comes to branding. Oh, sookie now, just in time for Christmas, but no time to wait. So go to the hswa.org and click on the menu dots where you'll find the donate tab that leads to the Schaefer Squad merch link. Scroll past the greeting to find our wide range of Schaefer Squad merch, from adult tees, kid tees, onesies and beanies for the babies, adult hoodies, hats and kicks, an apron for the cook, a hoodie for the pet, and a puzzle for the family. All prices include the outrageous cost of shipping, and all proceeds go toward helping Schaefer get a potentially life-changing stem cell treatment. You gotta believe it. And always remember, we're all in this together.
You can see it when you see me. me, but you gotta believe me. Ain't nothing coming easy my way. No, I fucking work for this.
So I did make another version of that. It does not have a cuss word in it. It does not talk about Christmas, and has another item that we've added to the
Where is it?
to the product list. And I wish I would have loaded. I should have loaded that one. I mistakenly pulled that one up. But no, before I end the show this week, I just want to remind everyone that part of what we're doing this for, it's not, we want to make an impact on everyone's lives in a way that we're offering, hopefully nuggets of knowledge and other shared experiences from our guests and each other that help you, just appreciate and lean towards a more purposeful life. But we also are hoping to impact lives on a more grand scale. And so the official mission of the Help Swede Walk Again organization is to help get stem cell therapies into the living rooms of America. Stem cells are an extremely revolutionary healing device, and I'm a huge believer in them. So by going to the hswa.org, you can go to like the instructions there. You can go to the Schaefer Squad merchandise page, and all of the cost of shipping is included in the price. I realize that it's not bargain shopping. You can go to Goodwill and get a t-shirt, or you can and let Goodwill's executives, which by the way, that's not a nonprofit organization. They're just another corporation. You can either let them benefit, or you can buy a t-shirt from us and let Schaefer be the benefit. So please consider joining our Schaefer Squad and we've got t-shirts and the hoodie. I love my hoodie, and I got my shirt on now.
Oh, I really wanted to wear my shirt today, but I'm freezing cold with this cold that I have. Awesome. Awesome. And the thing about the Schaefer Squad gear is that when you wear it, someone's bound to ask you about it, and it gives you the chance to tell them where they can go to donate if they so wish.
Yeah, and I know that as time goes, and we're having some luck. It's slowly growing, and there have been some sizable donations, and most of them are of average of average amount, but if you go to the HSWA, you can donate as little as $1. There's options to do recurring donations there. So there's people that are doing $1 a month. I've got people that do $5, $10, $25 a month. Got all kinds of different varying degrees of small donations that are recurring. If you just want to do a one-time donation, the options are to get some gear or to get the book. So the book is a minimum of $50. And that enters you into a raffle. So there's lots of different ways to get involved. And it's all with the hopes that we'll be able to get this guy there. And we know for sure that stem cells are showing lots of positive results in the world of cerebral palsy. Now, every individual is different, so there's never any guarantees that it can help any one individual. But that goes with everything in life, so you just got to believe. And that's why the shirt says, that's why actually I'm going to show you my hat. That's why part of it says, so it's Schaefer Squad. You got to believe, that it's going to be worth it, and this guy has the work ethic, and his family, they're amazing people, definitely are worthy. And we hope that once we've shown that we're able to get one person, that we're going to be able to do more. I'm really dedicating my life to growing this nonprofit, and I see a time in the future when we take the name Swede away, and it's just going to be, there's going to be an S in the HSWA that stands for someone. And then my goal is to grow this nonprofit so that it's churning out help and putting a lot of people into stem cell therapies, because they can help in so many ways. It's just about nothing that stem cells don't have a positive impact on.
And the work that we're doing, once people receive these stem cells and we see how this treatment impacts them, that's really a big pushback to big pharma. So, if you're looking for any way that you can push back on drugs being forced down our throat at every turn and start to use something more natural that we already produce, this is going to be a great cause to get behind.
Yes, and if you are unfamiliar with stem cells, we do have episodes in the past. We've talked about them. We have one episode where we went into depth and detail about how stem cells can impact you. But there's a lot of information out there. The stigma that is attached to stem cells about them, coming from, from aborted fetuses is so overblown and so old school news. There are so many ways now that we can get really high quality stem cells, and we can reproduce them in the lab, and they're seriously, there's no drawbacks. It's amazing that there's something that's like this, that they've literally found no drawbacks. It's, it's like almost like you drink too much water and you can have drawbacks, but it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that there's it's impossible, but they're really the consensus pretty much across the board. And if anybody that's a reputable source says that, stem cells have shown nothing but positive impact and positive results across the board. So really, really proud of that.
Excellent.
Well, D-Rex,
yes,
it's about that time.
yes,
I want to say thank you for every week being here. I was talking to you about this before we went on air, but I can't say it enough. The fact that you bring a level of professionalism and excellence to this show every week, I'm so eternally grateful for that.
Well, thank you. One might say that we're all in this together.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact. So one more thing we want to do. So next week.
Oh.
So we're gonna pose for next week. And what our thumbnail looked like this week. It's funny because when I said 1, 2, 3, I went to like push a button, like I was going to take a picture there, and I started laughing because I was like, "Oh yeah, all I'm going to do is just download this and capture whatever moment it is the most worthwhile." And you were just like, you made such this like, you were like, "I don't have to pose; it's just natural."
No, that's not true. In fact, you better hurry up and take this picture before I start coughing.
1, 2, 3, hell yeah! All right, well, always remember. We're all in this together, no matter the weather, whether sunshine or rain. There's no joy without pain. Always remember, we're all in this together. Can I get a hell yeah?
Hell yeah.
Thanks. But you gotta believe me, ain't nothing coming easy my way. No, I fucking work, but it's fucking